Let's talk about pronunciation. The good news is Spanish is really easy to pronounce. First of all, the vowels are A, I, U, E, O. And they're consistent. An A is always A. The letter I is always I. The letter that looks like an E to us is always E. U, it's never U in Spanish, it's U. Computadora, U, and O. So they're very consistent. And English is not consistent. I mean, every word you have to have somebody practice it for you before you know what the vowel sounds like, or you have to look it up. So Spanish is extremely consistent in the A, I, U, E, O. Another thing that you may never have really thought much about is the stress on a word. So where do you stress the word in English? Well, you have to almost learn them one by listening to other people or looking it up in the dictionary. How do you stress condominium? Well, if you moved that stress to condominium, nobody would know what you're saying. What? Condominium? You have to put the stress on the right syllable for people to recognize it. Condominium. Like haphazard. If you moved haphazard, if you moved the stress to haphazard, nobody would know. What is that? You have to put it on the correct syllable. Well, we have to learn those almost one by one. So the good news in Spanish is that stress is always consistent. There's a consistent place that you put the stress in Spanish, and that's on the next to the last syllable for all words that end in a vowel, an N, or an S. See? So you say zapatos, see? Cuaderno, sombrero. Do you hear the stress goes up and then down? That's called the penultimate syllable, the next to the last syllable. And that's where you consistently stress. So if you see a new word that ends in a vowel, an N or an S, you know that's where the stress goes. The other rule, so there's just two rules. The other rule is if it ends in a consonant other than S and N, then you stress the last syllable, like ciudad. See, that means city. Ciudad, D-A-D, ciudad. Or verdad, la verdad is the truth. And you stress the N because it ends in a consonant. Another consistent word, a class of words that end in consonants are verbs, because we studied that verbs end in AR, ER, and IR. So each one of those ends in a consonant, right? So you'd say escribir, comer, estudiar. So you're stressing the last syllable in that case because it ends in a consonant. Well, so those are the two rules, real easy, just follow that. Now, if there came a time that they needed to move a stress, because let's say it was a loan word or something, then they would mark it with an accent mark, right? So médico has an accent over the E. Teléfono has an accent over that second E. And that's because they've moved it off those two rules that they, go by. Well, that's one of the reasons for a stress mark being written in Spanish. Now, in some languages, a stress mark over a vowel, for example, will change the sound of the vowel. Like in French, that little mark means a different sound of the vowel, but that's not true in Spanish. In Spanish, the accent mark just moves the stress from where it should be, right, where it normally is. And there's one other reason that we use an accent mark in Spanish, and that is when two words are spelled the same, but they have different meanings. A good one for you to know is él, because when you learned the subjects, you learned I, you, he, she, it, we, and they. Well, he is él, but it has an accent mark, right? That's how I know it means he. If you took that accent mark off of él, it would mean thee. So two words that are spelled the same and sound the same can be distinguished in Spanish because we put an accent mark so you can tell the difference, right? So él and él, one means he and one means thee, and the only way I know the difference is that accent mark. And so in Spanish, let's review. In Spanish, you are consistent with your stress. It's the next to the last. They call it penultimate syllable for all the words ending in a vowel, an N or an S. Then, if you have a word that ends in a consonant other than N or S, you're going to stress the end of the end of the word. Ciudad, la verdad, comer, escribir, estudiar. See? And then the other reason is if they move the stress for some intentional reason that it's a loan word, then it'll be marked. Médico, teléfono. See? And then the other reason for a stress mark is that there's two words that are spelled the same, but they have different meanings. And to distinguish the two, you put an accent mark. So él for he has an accent mark, and él for thee has no accent mark. And it's really very simple to speak and pronounce Spanish.